Alright, so today we will be installing a antenna on a 4Runner. This is a 1994, and as you can see it has a broken power antenna. What we have to replace it with is this manual, well, not manual, just a fixed antenna, non-power from Metra. This particular one you can get on Amazon for about $20. It's a very nice antenna. As you can see the length right here. It's a pretty long antenna. So it comes with the actual antenna. It comes with this large mast or whatever it's called. And then some little hardware here. With this type of antenna versus replacing with a power antenna, you will actually have to run this cable through the car and to your radio. So this particular install will require removal of your radio. If you're replacing it with a power antenna, with the actual antenna part alone, and not the motor, then you won't have to access the radio. But for this particular installation, you will have to pull the radio out. Alright, so let's get started. The way we access the antenna is right here on the front right wheel well. There is a plastic panel here, a little splash shield, and it has 10mm bolts holding it in. What we're going to want to do is go ahead and remove enough bolts to get access to the antenna, which is directly behind this piece of plastic. Alright, so here we've got the plastic cover out of the way. We've got the power antenna sitting right here. This is the motor for the antenna, which we're going to be removing all together. It's held on by this little bolt here, and it's got a connector here for the power, and then the antenna wire runs up to the inside of the car right here. So what we're going to have to do is remove this whole assembly all together, unplug the connector, and then remove this whole thing as a unit, and then install the new fixed antenna.
First, unscrew this piece. Go ahead and remove the black plastic. Remove the 10mm bolt holding the antenna on. Disconnect the connector. Now remove the antenna as a unit.
Okay, once you get this little rubber grommet out of here for the antenna wire, we've got the whole assembly right here. This is the only thing left. Once you get this grommet out here, there's nothing really else you can do on the outside of the car until we go in and actually disconnect this wire from the back of the radio. So let's go ahead and do that. So before we can move the radio, we need to remove some of this dash trim, because there's no way to remove this radio at this point, because the tool that we need to access this radio goes in right about here and right about here. So what we need to do is go ahead and remove this plastic trim so we can get access to the radio.
First, find and remove all the screws holding on the lower trim panel.
Now you don't need to completely remove this piece of trim. You just need to get it down out of your way enough so that you will be able to remove this piece of trim, which is in the way of the radio. If you want to completely remove this piece of trim, you're gonna have to disconnect the cables for the hood release and for the gas door release. But you don't really need to mess with that unless you just want to get it completely out of your way. We just need to get it out of the way enough to remove this radio trim.
Remove the screws holding the glove box in. Before you remove the glove box, you will need to disconnect these two connectors. Then remove the glove box. Remove the lower trim piece. Pull off all the control knobs. Carefully pop out the AC button. Very carefully pry or tug on this radio trim piece. It can be pretty brittle after the years of sun and use, so very carefully just kind of easily work it downward and outward. The clock will want to come with this trim piece, so you need to be mindful of that. Lower the radio face if you can. Now there's a connector here for the clock that you'll want to remove. And there's also a connector for the cigarette lighter below that you'll want to remove. It may help if you pull your shifter all the way back. Depending on how your radio is installed, you may just be able to remove it with a screwdriver, or you may need special tools to go in the sides here on the head unit to remove the radio. In this case though, we just had screws. Go ahead and pop out that connector right there. At this point, the only thing holding this on is the connector for the clock. You can go ahead and remove that right here, or if you have enough room, you can just leave it and work your radio outwards enough to reach the antenna cable. Go ahead and remove the antenna cable. Now deroute the cable. It's going to go up over here. It's held in place with these black plastic clips around this metal bar, so you can kind of just pop it out of the clips and pull it backward away from the radio. You can see it wiggling right there. Just go ahead and start yanking it out.
Okay, this is the kind of tricky part. Where this antenna cable goes is buried behind the whole HVAC box, so we don't really want to remove that. Well, I don't want to. You might want to. I really have no interest in removing that. So what we can do is, if you look very closely, there's a little you can see a light at the end of the tunnel right above where my finger is. That's where the antenna cable comes in, and then it's routed up here behind this box. So what we're going to do is we're actually just going to cut this cable right here, and we're going to pull the antenna cable out of that hole. And then what we're going to attempt to do, that hole right back there, what we're going to attempt to do is then route the cable through that hole and out this opening right here. So it won't be quite as original fitment or installation, but I'm not going to remove this whole box. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull it through this hole. We're going to attempt to get it out here, and then route it up here somewhere and back along this bar where it was.
Go ahead and cut the cable. Yank out the old cable. Be careful, once it breaks loose, you'll probably fall on your butt. You may need a friend for this. Have them go ahead and feed the cable through.
Okay.
Use a screwdriver, pliers, or your fingers to grab the end of the cable and go ahead and pull it on in.
And push it a little more. Okay. Don't pull it back. Okay, push it. Alright, got it.
Okay, can I let go?
Yeah, thanks.
At this point, go ahead and pull enough cable in to reach the radio, but not a whole lot extra. Once we get the antenna mounted on the outside, then we can kind of figure out where we want the extra bit of cable to sit, whether it be inside or outside by the antenna. And you can route this around the bottom of this metal pipe, or you can, what I end up actually doing is putting it over this little box that's kind of here. It's hard to see, but by this pipe where the antenna initially ran. So once you get to this point, go ahead and unscrew this metal piece on the new antenna. Once that comes off, you'll be able to take this black plastic thing off. Then go ahead and stick the antenna up and through the hole on the fender. Insert the black plastic trim piece. Then go ahead and start to screw on this chrome piece. You don't have to screw it on all the way, just enough to hold the antenna up so it doesn't fall down. Now this bracket here, it will actually move up and down and side to side on the antenna. So go ahead and push it up and move it over where you need it so you can turn it and get it to line up with the hole on the existing antenna bracket. Once you get that where you want it, go ahead and put in the new supplied bolt, tighten it down. It doesn't have to be too tight yet because we're going to have to still adjust it up here. Use a wrench to tighten up the antenna mast. Once you get everything where you want it, you can go ahead and use a screwdriver or pliers to tighten up this piece. Install the supplied rubber grommet. You may need to use a screwdriver or something like that to get it to pop into place. Route the cable where you want it, leaving the excess wherever you decide. Just kind of keep it out of the way of the HVAC. Insert the antenna cable back into the radio. Reinstall the radio. Don't forget to plug back in this connector for the cigarette lighter. Reconnect the clock if you had yours disconnected. Then go ahead and start to raise the trim panel. Be careful of the clock, it will need to slide behind this trim piece for the HVAC controls. There's a few tabs here that you need to make sure that you get into the right spots. So be very mindful of every corner and edge. Lower the radio face if you need to. But be mindful of these tabs here that I'm messing with right now. This one goes underneath this trim piece. That's what I'm doing right there. I'm trying to get it underneath it. Once you get it under there, you can slide the whole thing up. If everything's lined up, it should pop right into place. If not, then you need to check and make sure what you did wrong. Now this little piece right here will pop in, but it has a tab right there in between the clock and the AC controls. You need to make sure that you get inside of the hole. The tab will line up with the hole, and once it does, this trim piece will just pop right into place. Reinstall your AC button. Reinstall all your HVAC knobs. Insert the plastic trim piece, sorry. Yours may have a screw on either side, mine did not. Reinstall the glove box. Make sure to get these connectors first. Now go ahead and raise the glove box. Once you line up this tab inside this hole, it will be enough to hold the glove box in place while you reinstall all these screws and the bolt. So get this 10mm bolt down here, and the screws. Slide the lower trim piece around the e-brake handle. Watch that tab there on the right, it'll need to go up under that other trim piece. Just like that. Reinstall all the screws holding on the lower trim panel. Pop on the trim piece for the key. Once you line up the tabs in the holes, this little rubber thing around the key ignition cylinder will pop into place. Go ahead and turn it on and make sure all your controls work. In the mirror, all I see. Everything should work as normal, except for you might have some issues with your AC button. If so, it's probably just not pushed in far enough. You can use your finger or a screwdriver to kind of pop it in just a little bit further so it makes contact. There you go. Once the light comes on, then you know that you've got it into place. Use a screwdriver if you need to. Reinstall the splash shield. And tighten up all the bolts.
Now that just about wraps it up. We got a nice looking antenna now. We got a radio that we can hear, radio stations that come in. It's a pretty good fit here. You can see that it's kind of dirty and discolored where the old antenna was, but you'll probably be able to get most of that out after a few washes, I would think. Maybe some buffing or something like that. Make sure this thing is tight here. You can use a screwdriver as I showed you to kind of work it around. If that doesn't work, you can put a little piece of paper towel or something around it and some pliers and just kind of twist it like that. Make sure this is tight so it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't fly off on the side of the road. So hopefully that helps, and enjoy your new antenna.